And then just to clarify, so this is for, I'm writing a history of the Catholic Scouts in our area. I think I'm almost getting there. It kind of started with Steve Perot. I was looking at some of his patches at a traderie, and I was looking at his collection of Catholic Scout patches because there's some that have a really beautiful design of like the chapel at heart on some of the patches, and then I was like, ooh, this is interesting, and then it kind of turned into a rabbit hole.
Yeah, as these things often do.
Exactly. So it's been a project, but I think I've gotten there. It's gonna be like a little booklet. I mean, hopefully, COVID, it sounds like it should be over by the fall or winter. I don't know, with the vaccines or whatnot, but hopefully at some point at the Archdiocese Mass, this could be given out. That's my ultimate goal. No real timeline, but
that's really awesome. And you're not even Catholic, right?
No, I'm Buddhist.
That's what I thought. Yeah. No, that's really cool that you're doing this. I'm impressed.
Thank you. I mean, I try to just answer his like questions that I think people would want to know, and it's also like, there's enough like Catholics and Jewish Scouts that there must be a history that I can find. So it's okay, let's do this.
Awesome. So what are you majoring in at Millersville?
Secondary education, social studies. So now.
Okay. So this really kind of ties right in.
Exactly. I'm
nice. And we're history buffs, so we'll get along just fine.
See, when we first met, finally at heart, after Maggie just like raving about y'all, I kind of sensed like, okay, I'm definitely gonna get along with these folks. So yeah,
that's awesome. We miss her.
I can imagine so, that because she's been in North Dakota. Did she come back for Christmas?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, we were very fortunate. Her original break was supposed to only be 12 days, and that included the travel days. But the school got a grant from the state to do upgrades to things that had to do with COVID. I don't know, maybe screening or something. And but the deal was it had to be done by December 31st. And they wanted all the kids off campus so that the workers could move more freely and not worry about contamination and all that. So they had everybody come home 2 weeks early and finish online. So she got to come home, I think it was December 11th or something like that. And so we got 3.5 weeks with her, which we were not expecting.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was very nice.
Very good.
Yeah.
We kicked all of our students out after Thanksgiving. So once Thanksgiving hit, we kind of said, all right, don't come back because we know y'all are with your families and we don't want to get folks sick. So did that. So it's been pretty nice. It was a very nice break. And then I was working break housing until like the proper start of break. So I made a whole bunch of money for being here anyway.
Good.
Student teaching.
Awesome.
So
nice. Are you undergrad or?
Yeah, I'm an undergrad.
You're not getting a master's, right? Okay. Yeah.
Oh, not yet. I graduate in May, and then I'll teach somewhere. We'll see. And then I'll probably get a master's at some point. I'm leaning towards American history because all the scouting history, it just kind of overlaps.
Yeah, that makes sense. Why reinvent the wheel if you don't have to, right?
Exactly.
Plus, living in the Philadelphia area, like the cradle of liberty, hello.
Exactly. And my father said, like, you ought to save some of the stuff you're looking into for your thesis or something. And I was like, Dad, I guess I will, but I don't know. I want to write at some point.
Or you could just expound on it.
That's what I was telling him. It's like, it doesn't have to be original, but he's like, oh no, they're going to want an original idea. And I'm like, okay, Dad. Part of me wants to do like an in-depth history of Black Scouting in our area, because I've heard bits and pieces, and we have some old Philadelphia Council yearbooks from the 20s at the council office, so we have to scan those, and I'm sure there's a wealth. But he's like, oh, you should save that for a thesis. And I'm like, Dad, I don't know if I'm going to save that.
Yeah, yeah. And if there's even enough there to work with, that wouldn't make it too big of a project and too much work, because at that point you'll be working and teaching and like, hello, time, you know?
Exactly. That's what I was telling him. I was like, I should probably do some of the research sooner rather than later, or just have multiple things I could do. But he has his opinions, and he's very like, oh no. And I'm like, okay, Dad.
I hear you. You know what? When the time is right, it will present, pardon me, it will present itself.
Exactly.
And it will be there, you know?
Exactly. I have faith. Yeah, I guess like I believe in like God in some form, because the Buddha doesn't tell us not to or to believe. So like, if it happens, it happens. I know like there's something guiding me, so I'm like, okay, I'll be fine.
There you go. That's you got to have something to hang on to. So that's a good way to look at it.
Amen to that. Definitely got to have something.
Yeah. So they're just putting the food up on the table. Let me grab some iced tea here. Can I pass you the macaroni and cheese? Forgive us for eating in front of you. It's just one of those days.
It's all right. I had Vietnamese food, and I'm pretty full. So.
Oh. You know what I made for the first time last week? Pho.
Oh, there you go.
Is that Vietnamese?
Yeah, pho. Yeah.
I made that. I can't get the lid on the iced tea straight. What the heck? Chaz, can you help me? I can't get the iced tea open. Oh, now it's jammed. But yeah, I made it. I found a recipe in a magazine, and so I made it, and it really turned out good.
Yeah, it's like very.
I felt like I was making a work of art.
Exactly. And it's just it almost feels like very clean eating. I don't know what it is about pho.
Good. No.
It's almost like dough deer, pho, a soup, a spring vegetable soup. No, I'm sorry. I won't do that again, I promise. You should see the look I'm getting.
I haven't heard that song in forever.
You know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to just move my laptop down.
Okay.
So you can see us,
okay,
and not just me. Well, he said he had Vietnamese food, so he's okay. Let's see. Let me put him on the box of boots. Ah! We have a dining room table that seats 16 comfortably. It's actually 3 tables that are end to end.
Oh, goodness.
Because you never know what's going to happen on a Tuesday night. How's that?
Makes sense.
That should work.
We're good. Anybody call John? Is he be coming home?
He said he'd be home at 7, so.
We're going.
Okay. All right, we're just going to pray, and then we'll start chatting.
Alrighty.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Bless us, O Lord, in these thy gifts, which you're about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Thanks for this wonderful food. Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Let's eat.
What's in a little
Okay, so.
Pass me those 2, please.
So this is Chaz. Say hi, Chaz.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
And Billy. Stick your hand out. That's Billy.
Nice to meet you.
This is Reese, and Reese worked camp staff at Musser with Maggie. And what made Reese really light up my world was we went to Camp Master one weekend, and they were having some kind of event, and they were serving beef. And Reese knew I was there, and unbeknownst to me, made me a special meal because he remembered that Maggie said that I'm allergic to beef. And he went to the trouble to make me a lovely meal just so I could eat with everybody else. So, and I was like, oh my gosh, Reese. And I have not forgotten that.
I kind of forgot that. For some reason, like, I remember weird things. But Maggie's talked a lot about y'all, especially because some of y'all worked at TI, so she
Maybe
told
talk
me
a lot
stories.
Yeah, well, I really appreciated that. So like I said, we'd be happy to help you anyhow, but even more so since you were so kind.
Oh, thank you.
You need check.
Yeah, there's like
Mashed potatoes. So Reese, if you want to explain again, if you don't mind, in a nutshell, just turn up the volume.
Mhm.
There we go. What it is that you're doing, because I think it's fascinating and amazing.
Alrighty, so hello, I'm Reese Wallace. I study secondary education social studies at Military University. I was the first youth chair of the Unami Lodge History Committee. Now I'm a co-advisor, I guess is my title. And for some reason, I was curious about the history of Catholic scouting, partially because of like good friendship with like Maggie and other folks. I realized nobody's done any research, and I've been kind of reading different things, trying to compile like a list of Catholic sponsored units and just collect patches,
I think you're
things like that. So I have like Catholic retreat patches going back to the 50s and things like that, thanks to Steve Perone. And now I'm trying to collect oral history so I understand things better, because I personally grew up Methodist and now I'm Buddhist, so I want to make sure I'm using the right terms and also not overlooking things.
Gotcha. And that's kind of amazing that you're Buddhist, not Catholic, and I don't know that any Catholic has tried to do this before.
I'm sure folks got
So
them.
it's notable.
Oh, thank you. I mean, there's a lot that Christianity and Buddhism shares, like when it comes to core values. We consider Jesus a bodhisattva, which is an enlightened person who chooses to live on to relieve the suffering of others. So for us, Jesus is still like an important figure. So a lot of Buddhists actually do celebrate Christmas because, I mean, Jesus was a good dude. I mean, there's no other way to cut it. So, and thank you for letting
That's
me
neat.
join your family dinner. I feel a little bad crashing dinner, but I do appreciate it.
No, I know it's awkward, but please don't, because it's just our scheduling mishap. So don't feel bad. I wish I could feed you.
Nobody's gonna
That's
try
what I
mac and
usually
cheese.
do.
Oh, I appreciate it.
okay.
Did you even try it? Don't bad mouth my mac and cheese unless you try it.
They're turning up mac and cheese. What can I tell you?
It's nacho mac and cheese.
Nacho mac and cheese. Okay. Well, you had given us a list of questions that Chuck and I had looked over. So I guess if we want to get started on those, or
Alrighty.
whatever you start with is fine with us.
Alrighty, sounds good. So what unit were y'all part of or still a part of, and is it sponsored by a Catholic institution or?
Yeah, we were a member of two chartered organizations. 127?
127 out of St. Tim's in Northeast Philly, and 290 out of Fox Chase,
St. Cecilia's.
which is St. Serge. Both of them hosted by Catholic parishes.
Alrighty, so you kind of had that Catholic community. Very nice, very nice. Because I'm trying to, at some point, I need to find scouts who were Catholic but not in Catholic-sponsored institutions and figure out how they found a religious community through scouting. So I got to find somebody, but it's good that y'all had that community. So I guess for y'all, so as parents, why did you choose scouting for your children?
Well, we homeschooled from, way before it was cool.
Pre-pandemic homeschoolers.
Yeah. But Chaz, Chaz could read when he was 3. And it was just that I read to him, or we read to him, and he just kind of sucked it up like a sponge. So homeschooling sort of naturally evolved. And Chuck was in the Navy at the time, so we were around a lot of Navy officers who homeschooled because they moved every 2 years. So we got introduced to it there. and then engaged with it formally when he got to like first grade level, 6 years old. And where I wanted to have a more formal, feel for instruction. And it just kind of came naturally. A lot of people that homeschooled that we connected with also did scouts. And Chuck was in scouts as a little kid, but didn't like it, right?
I didn't like it as a teenager. I didn't like Boy Scouts.
Yeah. But his brother was way into scouts, his oldest brother, way into scouts. So there was always, like, his brother worked at TI. He worked at Camp Newman, which was a Catholic kids camp in Bucks County. But that whole idea of a summer camp experience and, all that kind of flowed. And then, like I said, when the boys came along, it just kind of, it augmented our homeschooling so nicely. And it was a great way for them to make friends and connect. Yeah. So it just kind of happened.
Gotcha. And thank you for your service, by the way. I didn't realize you
You're
were
welcome.
in the Navy.
I was 6 years.
Oh, goodness. So did y'all do scouting on base at all, or?
No, they
After.
were little. Chaz was almost 2.5 when I got out of the service, so he was too young for a scout.
Okay.
We started with Cub Scouts at St. Timothy's.
Mm-hmm.
And then that Cub Master was looking to retire from being Cub Master. And his kids were grown, and you know how that story goes. And he immediately picked up on Chuck's interest and just kind of, Chuck's a very hands-on dad. And you know how that's really who you look for when you're looking for a leader. The dad who's not afraid to get in there with the kids and do the stuff. So he kind of just zeroed in on him. But anyhow, so Mr. Buenaflor zeroed in on him, and so he became assistant Cub Master for a year, and then Cub Master, and then I got involved with the committee, and I was committee chair, and then eventually we restarted the troop. And we had the troop for a couple of years, as well as the pack, but then the neighborhood tanked, and we had to let it go because all of a sudden all the parents that did anything moved out of the area, and it just wasn't sustainable.
Gotcha. So I didn't really think of homeschooling and scouting, but that makes sense now that I think about it, how those two would pair really well.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess like through scouting, like the biggest thing. So I read this book from the 80s called Building Character in the American Boy, Scouting and the YMCA and its predecessors. And they have an entire section, like chapter, where they talk about religious institutions and scouting. And like the argument they make is, scout units became a better replacement for youth groups because it retained boys, and, it was a model that could easily be done. And, it helped with religious instruction as well. So I'm kind of curious to see how that occurred with your own family. So how has scouting allowed your other scouts, but also your sons, and I mean, Maggie too, of course, grow in their faith from, I guess, your perspective? And then if the others, if y'all, Chaz and Billy, right?
Yeah.
If y'all wanted to say how it expanded your faith too, that'd be interesting to see your perspective as well.
Thankfully, the parish was very supportive of the religious education medals in scouting, the Light of Christ and the Parvoli Dei. We didn't get up to the Ad Altari Dei, but they encouraged it. The pastor was receptive to it. He was just like, okay, tell me what to do and I'll do it. Kind of, he was ex-military. So he was very, if you want something done, if you have an idea, great, but you have to execute it. And if you want his help, he'll help, but you have to do the work, which we were more than happy to do. So it did help, especially with sacramental preparation. It really helped augment what we were doing with that. And especially, we didn't put our kids in religious education training at the church because we were already doing it at home. And the nun who was in charge of all that didn't feel it was necessary or really even helpful to duplicate that. So the projects, the hands-on kind of stuff, it gave us that extra piece that kind of filled it out. And then it was interesting too, Chaz, you weren't an altar server, but Billy, you were.
Yeah.
And the priest always loved when the scouts served because they just had a different sense of how to, I guess, decorum or how to handle themselves when they were, especially for holidays, holy days. He just knew that he would get a different level of attention and propriety from them. Did you want to add anything to that?
Not too much because I don't really want to comment a whole lot. But I would say that the Scouts definitely reinforce a lot of the things that you would teach or that you would learn, at church and everything. I've actually been thinking a lot very recently about how the Scouts kind of really shaped me to certain characteristics that I have now, especially like not that this has a whole lot of significance, but just to give one specific like recent example. I just moved into my first apartment, and with that, I've kind of like I went through all of my stuff. Everything's organized, and I mean, there's still things that need to be unpacked, but my things are all sectioned away. And as I was doing that and going through all my stuff, I was able to get rid of a whole lot of things, or at least things, not even a whole lot, but just things that I didn't need, and took that stuff to donation. And now that I'm kind of building myself out, I'm trying to get by on just like having very few things as possible and that sort of thing. And it's interesting because I just see myself doing it now, like in other little things. Like if I use a paper towel to dry my hands, I'll hold on to the paper towel and put it in my pocket and maybe use it again for something else later on. Which is frugal, which is one of the it's one of the steps of the Scout oath, I believe.
Thrifty.
Thrifty.
And thrifty, yeah. No, there's both of them, right?
Frugal's not one of them.
Frugal's not on there? I must have just learned that. That was probably like the word of the week at Judge, something that's sticking out to my head. Thrifty then. I was between those two. And it's just funny because I've actually just within like even today and the past couple of days, there's been a couple instances where that had happened.
And
so
it reminded you of back.
Just the idea that like again, that doesn't carry a whole lot of significance. I'm not saying that I saved the world or anything, but just the idea that that's like a very specific example of how like that kind of clicks in the back of my head, and it just shows that does stick with you and have an impact in your life later on down the line. Which I thought was kind of neat.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
When you talk about the religious aspect of the Scouts, because I was a Cub Scout master at St. Tim's, and I just followed what the Cub Scout master did before me. I had no idea how to run a Boy Scout troop. I was in the Boy Scouts for 2 years back in the 90s, back in the 80s, early 80s. And it was very centered around the Catholic parish. We met at the hall. We went to the school. Everybody went to that school. We went to church as a group. We went to mass as a troop on a camping trip. We went to mass. And that's the only experience I ever had with Scouts. So I had no idea that even Scouts were not going to church on Sunday as a group. I just assumed that everybody was because that's what I knew. So when I took over the troop, we just ran it like I was in the troop in the 80s. That's what we did. We put our uniforms on. We did a Scout Sunday. We showed our presence in the church. We helped around the parish. We went to mass. We invited priests to go camping with us. We were very, very centered around the Catholic Church because that's all I knew. like I said, I didn't know there was a different way to do this. So it was just a natural progression of, okay, well, it's Sunday. We're going to go to church as a group, go camping, get up and go to church. Or if you bring a priest with you, you have mass right there at the campsite, which we've done repeatedly.
Yeah, that was always fun. We would invite the pastor to come on like the family camping trip, the yearly family trip in May. And it was nice because on Saturday night, he would say mass before dinner. So he got a feel for what we were doing, which he should be familiar with.
Burning stuff.
You know, as the
up.
pastor, you know, he should have some front row experience. And it was great for the kids because it just made it natural to combine the two, and that both were an important part of our life.
And it showed the priest out of his natural element, which was like
Yeah.
priest in the woods. Kids never seen priests in the
Very
woods.
humanizing.
Yeah.
So you see a priest cooking a hot dog or burning wood, and it makes them a little more human instead of just somebody I can't talk to.
Wearing a flannel shirt and hiking boots, you know?
Yeah.
I never thought of that humanization
The
of
cinnamon one or the plain one?
I never thought of that, seeing the priest outside of, I guess, his natural habitat, like kind of just doing quote unquote normal stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome that y'all had that relationship with the church. It must have been really nice having mass just in the woods wherever y'all were.
It's very personal when they say a mass for 15 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oddly enough, when I was a scout, I was the chaplain's aide for like a year.
Wow.
So it's very nice. It seems like Scout Sundays were always like a strong thing, but you guys also went to mass like I guess every Sunday almost as a unit. So was Scout Sunday?
No. Well, just on camping trips. We go camping once a month. So on the camping trip, we'd go.
We'd have like one mass a year where we come to the church. And,
it was Scout Sunday.
Scout Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, that was just like a once a year thing.
But we camped about 7 times a year, but the weather was nice. And every time we went camping, we went to mass as a group. No matter.
Yeah, that was, for us, it's a requirement to go to mass on Sunday. And like, we're bound to that. So it always was, okay, we're going camping, we have to figure out where the nearest Catholic church is, because you don't go away for the weekend and not go to mass. Well, either Saturday night or Sunday, it doesn't matter, but you have to go. And
You don't try the news either?
that's always been.
I've had salsa con queso before.
That's always been
I
a
know
thing
what it
for
does
us.
to my stomach.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, and then Scout Sunday, we would give out their awards.
Mhm.
So I always had to watch the timing of when they would start that stuff and finish it so that we could give them. And it was a big deal. And the whole parish would come,
Delicious on
or a lot of the parish would come, and the pastor would award them their medals. At the mass, and bring them up on the altar. So they made a really big deal out of it. So it was very nice, and it made the scouts very visible to the parish as well. And then, so we have a tradition as Catholics that the night before Easter Sunday is the Vigil Mass, and it's very long and very involved, and it starts outside, weather permitting, with a fire. And from that fire, you light the tall Easter candle that you'll see in a Catholic church. You light that candle, and then there's a procession. And when you go into the church is dark, and everybody has candles, and they start lighting everybody's candles from the Easter candle, and the church starts to glow, and it's absolutely beautiful. Well, the scouts got put in charge of the Easter fire, both lighting it, getting it going, being on standby in case it got out of hand, which it did a couple times.
Not totally out of hand.
Not totally out of hand.
Catch the church.
It was a little windier.
We almost caught an altar server on fire, but that was okay.
Rolling around.
Well, because their vestments are blowing in the breeze, and then extinguishing the fire afterwards. So as the priest goes in and mass continues and the congregation follows, then somebody's got to take care of the fire. So the scouts were always in charge of that. And which is nice too, because it was like our way of giving back to the parish. Like the pastor always knew he could count on the scouts for certain things.
Very Awesome. So a lot of service to the parish, and then to the
7 o'clock.
Yeah.
the priest. So a lot of service back, and then how you say?
Here, sit down. I'll introduce you.
Oh, just a
So
lot
Reese,
of.
Reese Wallace. This is John Paul.
Hello. He worked
Nice
with
to
Maggie.
meet you, John.
He worked with Maggie up at Musser.
Cool.
And John Paul is the child just above Maggie. They're,
Oh,
Google
okay. I
appetizers.
was about to say,
Yeah,
I
mashed
think
potatoes too.
Maggie's talked about all of you, but I think she's talked about John Paul the
Yeah.
most.
yeah, they're the
Yeah.
closest to me. And
That's cool.
I made meatloaf.
so John is a music educator, music
Right next
teacher. He went to Westchester.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he's a percussionist. So he was the one in the marching band, if she mentioned that. What was I going to say? Oh, and John's an Eagle Scout.
Oh,
The
nice.
only Eagle Scout. The only Eagle Scout in the room.
You got issues, don't you?
So
So Reese is interviewing us about Catholic scouting, and we didn't realize we would be having dinner. So I apologized to him, but I figured, well, we'll just have dinner. We'll have a dinner meeting.
Cool.
So that's what we're doing. All righty, we can continue.
and then did y'all ever attend any of the archdiocese scout retreats at all?
We
No.
didn't. They weren't as on our radar. And I don't know why. I was thinking about that before this call. As we looked over, because we had looked at these before and then set it aside because we had to reschedule. And then I was just looking at it this afternoon and I was like, I don't really remember even hearing too much about them, unfortunately. But, you know, back then too, communication was not what it is today. And even today we have problems. So you can imagine back then it was a lot worse.
Pretty simple.
I can imagine. Okay. That's odd that it wasn't as promoted. I thought that would be a bigger thing, but oh well.
Yeah.
So we kind of hit on the themes of managing religious obligations while also camping. So what has that experience always been like? You kind of mentioned always having to find the nearest, I guess, Catholic church to go to mass because that's a requirement, or bringing a priest out with y'all. So has there been other difficulties in meeting religious obligations while camping?
Not really,
Anything like
no.
that?
As
No.
long as you're prepared for the weekend before you go, there's usually no surprises when you get up Sunday and say, oh, there's no church around here. You know before you leave. We know before we book the place.
Yeah.
You know.
I would have that all mapped out. Because the luxury of, well, is it really a luxury of being committee chair was that I did all the organizing and the paperwork.
Oh, right there.
So he would have a binder with all the health forms and, you know, all the contact information, all the usual stuff a scoutmaster should have. But he'd also have information on where the church was, where the hospital was, that kind of
Those are
stuff.
awesome.
Why is there
And the tour permits and
It's
all the stuff we had to have. That was just a given. But they never, I mean,
I think that was good.
Did you tell
they
them
always
about
camp locally, relatively speaking. So maybe, you know, Okanagan or the one in Maryland.
Nagamuzi, they're all Indian names. For some
You know,
reason.
there's that one in Maryland
It's all
everybody
in
loves.
Yeah, pretty much.
Rodney?
Oh, yeah, Rodney is, yeah. But, you know, anywhere they went, I managed to figure it out. I don't know. I never got to say any of them. I'm not bitter.
She was a little bitter.
And then summer camps you went to, did they have accommodations? Like, did they have the sacraments or have like a
Oh
separate?
yeah, summer camp. We went to Treasure
Mass?
Island.
Yeah, but you go to mass on Saturday night.
Yeah,
But they didn't have it there.
They had the non-denominational thing.
They had that,
I
yeah,
don't,
they
I
had
don't know
that.
if they had like a Catholic mass at some.
They wouldn't usually do a Catholic mass. No.
They would do a non-denominational.
They have a non-denominational Christian service. Thing.
Did you catch what Chaz said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because I know TI has a Catholic altar in Kiwanis.
One of them. I'm
Honestly,
not sure what that.
yeah, so I didn't know if that was used at all or there's any obstacles with that.
No, they were always well prepared for the Catholic kids.
Well, that's good to hear. I asked stuff like that because with Delmont, apparently at some point they had a separate Roman Catholic camp at Delmont. And I guess back in the day when Fish on Fridays was like more widespread practice, they actually just changed the entire camp menu to accommodate that. So that's
Well,
why.
Catholicism used to be a lot more prevalent too. It was just a thing. If you ever look at the movies from the 40s, the big movies with like your Jimmy Stewart and Humphrey Bogart and Cary Grant, those kinds of, when they talked about like VE Day or VJ Day, and they'd say, oh, people went to church, or they always show a Catholic church because it was kind of just so prevalent. It was the majority. Now that's no longer the case, but it just kind of made more sense. And I think a lot of Protestant denominations followed, because a lot of churches, Baptists in particular, do fish fries a lot of times on Fridays. So I think a lot of Protestant denominations fell away from it, but we hold to it. So, and that also affected the camp menu. Of when you were, and there were certain times that we would not plan a camping trip because of a holy day or, like the Easter or Holy Week. So we'd have to be careful how we scheduled stuff so as not to interfere with being able to observe those days.
Yeah, you were talking about like the prevalence of, I guess, Catholicism. That kind of brings up a new question. So in your time in scouting, have you seen a difference in the number of Catholic scouts, or have you seen units fold or, create, or I don't know what that has looked like?
Big time fold.
It's been diminishing. I mean, when I was a kid, there was 180 kids in a troop. Yeah.
180? What do you do with that many scouts?
Kids. It looked like a military operation when we were standing in formation and go anywhere, because it would literally be 150 kids on a camping trip. Everybody had the same stuff. Everybody had the same equipment. Everybody had the same tents. But we're talking 40 years ago. When we started 10 years ago at St. Cecilia's, they had 90 kids. I think they're down to 40.
40 now, yeah.
In the last 10 years, it's dropped off that much. People just don't get involved with the scouts the way they used to.
Well, and people aren't Catholic the way they used to be. If you think about so St. Timothy's is in Mayfair, Irish Catholic neighborhood. We moved out of that area in 2007 and moved here to Fox Chase, to St. Cecilia's Parish.
You even try the noodles? Really good.
That's, that housing boom hit in the early 2000s and kind of peaked in 2006 and 7 and then fell off sharply. In that few years, 4 or 5 years, St. Tim's went from an enrollment of 2,000 kids down to 600. The Catholics just picked up and moved out. And so if you look at the suburban parishes and the suburban units, they're exploding. The Catholic schools are being built, whereas here they took St. Leo's in Tacony, and I forget what the other one was. No,
close to St. Williams.
Yeah, but that's here. I'm talking about St. Tim's. It was St. Leo's and another parish. I think maybe Our Lady of Consolation or something. One of them down in the Tacony area, combined them all. And now St. Timothy's is no longer, the parish church is still St. Timothy's, but the school is Blessed Trinity Regional Catholic School. Mm. So you're seeing schools combining. I went to St. Martin of Tours on Oxford Circle. That, when I went there, we had 50 to 60 kids in a class and 6 classes in a grade. It was the largest non-public elementary school in the world in 1967, I think. And they had hundreds of kids. They had a Boy Scout troop that was astronomically large. So as the parishes shrink and the enrollment in the school shrinks, then the unit is going to shrink. And wherever those people go, that's where you're going to see the growth. But all that being equal, you're also seeing a drop now in people practicing the Catholic faith. They're not putting they may put their kids in scouting, but it's not important to them that it's a Catholic unit. Like for us, we would only put our kids in a unit attached to a Catholic church because we need those religious observances accounted for, for them in order to make scouting accessible to them.
And then kind of like the augmenting of their growth in faith with the medals and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. And I guess like a fun question, what's your favorite chapel of all of our council camps?
I don't know because I haven't really been to them.
I like the one up at Delmont.
I'm not, I've just started camp mastering this past year and haven't gotten to explore a whole lot.
Well, Wilbur Rock at Delmont is an excellent chapel because it's literally just open air. And then the one at Hart is literally the arch is supposed to look like hands clasped in prayer. It's really
I'll
pretty.
have to go check that out when I'm up there next. We have to get up there soon.
So I was talking to Mrs. Tryon, and she kind of told me about how she and Tom and I guess her husband went to Spain, and they met some Spanish Catholic scouts, and like the just instant connection. So I was wondering, what has your experience been like meeting other Catholic scouts?
It's actually more interesting meeting scouts who aren't Catholic. Hey, Billy, can I bug you for 1 minute, one question? Because like we almost have too much in common. Can you speak for a moment to your experience of meeting the Jewish or the Israeli scouts? Do you remember that?
The Israeli scouts, were they? I guess they were Jewish, weren't they?
Yeah, they gave you Jewish flags
Jewish
to hang.
They were Israeli flags.
Israeli flags, yeah.
So I couldn't remember if they were Christian or not because they just.
No, they'd have to be Jewish to be members of the state of Israel.
I don't know. It didn't really.
How did you meet them?
They worked at TI as part of like a foreign exchange program, and then I don't know if it was related, but I knew that when they were going back to Israel, they were going to be joining the armed forces, which was like a requirement. In the country, it's like once they turn 18, they have to. Everyone serves like 2 years.
Yeah, male and female alike.
Yeah, but they were really cool guys. There wasn't anything too specific. We never like talked about religion or anything like that. But they were their name were Ben and something. I can't remember the other guy's name. But yeah, I don't know. The religion that didn't really factor in too much. I'm trying to think.
So I remember you came home and they'd given Billy gifts of Israeli flags, like a banner, like a that you'd see like at a party where it's like the little flags hanging down off a string, a whole bunch of them in a row, and you just really were so happy to have met them. They seemed like you really
cool
enjoyed
guys.
them.
It was neat meeting people from the other side of the world.
Yeah, who were also doing scouting, and I just thought that was great. All of the boys worked at either Musser or TI. Chaz was one of the first to staff the pirate ship at Garrison when that opened, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, it was like the first or second year.
Billy, you were at TI?
I was at TI for like 2 weeks just before they closed.
Oh, okay.
And then I think I did a year at Cub World.
Yeah. And John Paul did.
He was a CIT.
Yeah, CIT accounting, CIT and
He
training.
was that 13-year-old kid they were putting to work all over the place.
And Freddie was all TI. Freddie is hardcore TI.
What?
And Chaz, like I say, he was Musser.
Joey worked at TI too.
Yeah, and our nephew was at TI. But
Pinky.
yeah. But like Catholic scouters, like they all have the same stuff in common. So it wasn't that exciting to meet them because they were kind of a dime a dozen in Philly.
That makes sense. I can imagine that. Okay.
Yeah.
And then gotcha. I think we've already talked about how scouting's kind of been that extension of your religious.
Scouting really does tie into all of our religious, moral, ethical values. It just hand in glove. So we're really, really glad that we did. And that's why we're still involved, because we want to be able to help the next generation of families benefit. I can't imagine not having had scouting in our family. I perish the thought. What's that?
Why'd y'all start camp mastering?
Oh, because they give us a free cabin for a weekend, for one thing.
It's mercenary. No,
Makes
I'm
sense.
kidding. It is a nice little getaway, but like I said, we want to be able to help make sure that it's there for that next generation. You know, we're done. We've been done. But who's going to be there? Like, what can we contribute in a meaningful way that we can handle? You know, we've been there, done that. We're big believers in that the current parents need to be the leaders. They need to do the work for their benefit as well as their children's. And we don't need to do that. Like, that's for them. And if we're doing it, it's taking it away from them. That's an experience as a parent that you don't want to miss out on. So what can we do to make a meaningful contribution? Well, Camp Master. It takes a village to run camp. Poor Ranger, God bless Ranger Lynn. I love him and his wife. They are amazing. And they're delightful to be with. They're delightful to work with. They're very simple, humble. You know, they're just rock stars. So we can help them. And when we work and help them, then the families benefit. And then when we're done, we're done. We don't have the stray voltage from the meetings and the politics and all the fun stuff that comes with any kind of volunteering.
Yeah.
So we go in, we do our thing for the weekend, and we're done. We had a good time. We got out in the fresh air. We made a contribution, and now we can go home and take a nap.
And it's funny because all those years I've been camping up at Delmont. We went to Delmont twice a year for almost 15 years. At least 40 times we've been at Delmont. And I'd be with the dads after the kids went to bed. And it's like, wouldn't it be great if we could just do this without the kids? You know, just come up and hang out and build fires and burn stuff. And I always thought it was cool, the guy who came around with the gator with the big brown hat and made sure everything was cool and the fire is safe and the kids are having a good time. And that's my job. That's what I do now. Now that I'm retired from Boy Scouts, I get to drive around from site to site, and I'm the guy who makes sure everybody's having a good time, or everybody's being safe, or anybody needs any information. I'm the go-to guy when you're camping. And I always thought that was the coolest job in the world. And once we got the opportunity to do that, I was like, and they're going to let us come up for free? Not a problem. We'll do it as often as we possibly can.
They ask for one or 2 weekends a year, but we try to give them 6 if we can.
Oh, wow.
Well, yeah, with their schedule and everything, anytime we get a free weekend, it's like, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, so we try during the nice weather, 1 weekend a month from like April to October.
Very good. They definitely need it because every council newsletter I see camp masters needed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have enough.
I think that's like on my bucket list as well. Get some folks together.
Yeah, we used to joke that our retirement plan was that we would retire to Musser and I would be the camp nurse and he would be the ranger. And now it's like, wait a minute. Now
That actually could happen.
we're kind of doing that. Well, we won't be the ranger and the nurse, but we're serving in a capacity similar.
No.
We once the Cub Camp gets back up and running, we always are looking for someone with medical skills. So
Yes, you are. I heard about your medical skills last year.
yeah, we could you could get paid to do all that, and
Who's that guy, Mr. Benadryl?
I see a good candidate to run a shooting range across from me.
I've actually done that before.
Yeah.
So I can definitely.
Maggie could do that too. I think she was qualified. Chaz was qualified. Chaz actually ran the
He did the
rifle range
BB range.
for the Cubs.
Yeah.
So he's qualified. He was NRA satisfied.
Certified.
He was certified too.
Very good.
And we were certified to do everything. We were certified lifeguards. We were certified the rifle, boating. We were certified to do everything.
I mean, that's extremely useful. So
yeah, the skills never go away.
Exactly.
Just got to update the paperwork.
Yeah, pretty much.
Me and the scouting paperwork don't get along, especially the trainings you got to do every like 2-3 years. Oh goodness.
I know. We still got to do it.
That's the other thing was, when we were active as leaders, I didn't get to go camping.
Mm-hmm.
I always did the family trip the one weekend in May, but back then, like the moms didn't go.
Mm-hmm.
It just culturally wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I had a bunch of little kids at home, so it really wasn't practical. It wasn't a family trip. And my husband was going, so, it was a good time for him and the boys to bond or whatever. And then actually, when the littler Billy and John were little, I would always, it just always worked out that the week that they went up to or out to summer camp, wherever that would be, as Boy Scouts, it would be our district's summer camp, day camp. So locally. So I would be the camp nurse for the local day camp. And I could take all my littles to that, whether it was boys or girls, that, it didn't matter. But they could go to day camp while Daddy and the big boys were away at camp. So it always, it worked out, which was really, really neat.
Gotcha. That definitely makes sense. I remember day camp with my district, so I know exactly what you're talking about, like bringing everybody.
Yeah.
So I guess the next question is, I understand that St. George is this patron saint of Scouts. I don't know if y'all, I don't know how to word it. If he's more prevalent. Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't know until you told me, actually. I'm sorry.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. It seems like a lot of folks don't know. So I didn't know if there's particular devotion or to him in particular, or just kind of like, he's there.
Yeah, he's just kind of there, but they have a nice prayer card.
Mm-hmm.
Catholics are big on them. It's kind of like the baseball trading cards of the religious world. But so they have a nice Catholic scouting prayer card with the St. George prayer on it or something like that. I guarantee you I've got at least one out. I have a little basket of holy cards in my foyer. I guarantee you there's at least one out there. But when it was nice because they were like laminated, and when the kids would get different awards, especially the religious awards, we would give them one of those. Or if kids were making their first Holy Communion, we would make a little gift up for them and give them that prayer cards, for the kids that were in the pack. So I handled more of that kind of stuff, and I was aware of it, but we didn't really practice any particular devotion to him or, intercessory prayer to him or anything like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So then I guess the final question is, what impact would you say your faith has had on your identity as a scout? But it kind of seems like the two have been very intertwined as we've been talking, which makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of...
Well, like any other part of our life, our faith is just part of us. I mean, I drive a truck for a living, but I'm still a Catholic man. Just happen to be a Catholic truck driving man. There's no separation of faith and anything. So anything we do is centered on our faith. So Of course, Boy Scouts would be. I mean, because that's part of the faith thing anyway. But we would always be Catholic Boy Scouts because we're Catholic people. It's just the way we are.
And something that just struck me is Catholic with a small c means universal. So we are called to be accepting of everyone, meeting people where they're at, no matter who they are, what their background is. Trying to always reach out to connect with the other. And in scouting, same thing. Scouting is a world, the worldwide scouting emblem we wear on our uniforms. We are supposed to promote the brotherhood and, just really respect for the other individual. And scouting is always a place where kids could be accepted for who they are, hopefully. Where that was encouraged, that was promoted. It is, I should say. So they really just, they're two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm. Well said. And is there anything y'all would like to discuss that I've possibly missed?
I mean, just having women and girls in scouting now, I am so pleased.
Mm-hmm.
We have an older daughter, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Who
also grew up in scouting.
Yeah, but she didn't. She wasn't interested in venturing like Maggie was. Maggie wanted to get in and get her hands dirty. Elizabeth didn't, but she was always a part of everything.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of those tag-alongs. Maggie was a tag-along too, ever since she was born.
Yeah, and so she was really happy to see, because like she said, she did all this stuff and never got any credit for it. And it's so nice now to have scouting available, and really it's available to families. It's not just, to boys, to girls, it's to families, which is one of the best things that I think has ever happened to scouting. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the next 20 years, the next generation, where they steer the ship and how this develops. And hope that the girls will take advantage of those aspects of the program, whatever their faith may be, to engage in those aspects of the program. I hope that those aspects continue to be promoted, and not because there's, anytime you roll out something new, there's so much stray voltage with it that you can lose some of the basics in the struggle or in the rollout. So I hope that the faith-based aspects of scouting are introduced to the girls, that the girls are encouraged to engage, and then see what the girls can add to the conversation. So it should be interesting.
Oh, I definitely agree. I think I'm seeing young women getting into the OA. I'm seeing them join camp staff. I think the national boatswain for Sea Scouts is a young lady. So I think we'll see exactly what you're talking about. We'll see more faith-based activities and awards earned by lots of young women. So I think it'll be just as interesting as you. I'm definitely on the same boat.
Good.
I'm very excited. I love seeing scouting truly be for family, because I always was thinking of the tag-alongs, and I'm like, well, they should be getting credit.
Yeah.
Because we had tag-alongs at muster before it was official.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
You always do.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I definitely understand that. So I guess I'll stop recording there, and then I'll just kind of, debrief and explain some of the stuff so I'm transparent.